I never really understood my father's taste when it came to television. He loved Peppa Pig and everything about it, as he was a major man-child. He had decorated his entire bedroom with Peppa Pig merchandise. He had all the DVDs, video games, plush toys, and CDs. He had even gone as far as to form his own gang of pals who met every week in my living room to discuss the show. They called themselves the Picking Boys. It wasn't a large group as it only consisted of my father and 4 other guys. The first man was named Dr. Gareth Schmelek, who was incredibly smelly. Sadly, there is no cure for it, so he's been smelly since the day he was built by Dr. Heinz Doofenshmirtz at the Baked Bean Factory. The second was of General Asquith, who led the entire British military. He was also the identical twin brother of the late Great Police Commissioner Richard Asquith. The third was Luca Barsi, and the fourth and final man was a quiet man who never spoke. He only ever listened his name was Mr. Shadow. My father often forced me to take part in their discussions and used me for an outsider's opinion. Despite the fact I've told him time and time again, I have no interest in such topics, but any disagreements in the matter led to General Asquith threatening to put my house under martial law. Also, they made me dress up like Daddy Pig while they ate hard-core cornflakes with gravy.
Why are you doing this to me?
I had asked one day.
Because if we didn't do it, then someone else would.
They sang while downing several bottles of the Shadow Eater's homemade otter sauce.
We do it for the fear and love of Don Corleone himself,
Luca explained while making hot, steamed hams with Skinner, the spicy chef.
Get it?
I was desperate to get revenge, so I sought the help of a well-dressed man named Victor Kennedy, who claimed to be my salvation. He lent me a DVD of Peppa Pig and told me that it contained a never-before-seen episode which he had specially produced for me. It was just a blank DVD case with nothing on it. "Wow, lazy cover design, man," I said, which caused Victor to slap me with his cane.
"You stupid man,"
he yelled as he made his way back into the shadows of the night. I took the DVD to my house and presented it to my father and the rest of his psychotic gang. As soon as he saw that, he took the DVD and kissed the case violently. He then headed into the kitchen to make us some popcorn, where Luca put the disc into the DVD player. "So, how are things with you, Mr. Shadow?" I asked. He didn't respond. Instead, he played with a small otter plush toy which was sitting proudly atop his shoulder. "Why did you bring this DVD to me? You want me to talk to my Don?" Luca asked, confused. "No," I said, as the DVD started with a brief clip which had a scarecrow in a field. A small schoolboy came up to him and gave him a pack of Starburst. The scarecrow was unable to reach the Starburst due to his short little arms, and he ended up collapsing onto the ground.
"Shit!"
the scarecrow yelled angrily. The clip ended as my father came back into the living room, placing a large bowl of popcorn under the table in front of us. "So, where exactly did you get this DVD from?" my father asked as he sat down next to me on the sofa. "Some DVD store a few blocks down the road," I explained while Schnellnick smelt some smelly CDs. My father seemed to buy the lie, as the episode began with the normal theme song, which was completely normal. It was so normal it caused Smelnick to jump out of the 3-story window, crashing into a bus to Scotland. I freaking love Scotland. Just thought I'd let you know that, dear reader. The episode then started with an outside view of Peppa Pig's house, with the narrator saying, "It was a normal day in Peppa's house." Only the narrator sounded incredibly awkward, as he had forgotten his lines, as he was constantly mumbling them and sounded drunk as if he had downed a whole bottle of vodka before recording them. Inside the house, Peppa, George, Mommy, and Daddy Pig were all sitting in the living room with saucy looks plastered on their faces. My father paused the episode briefly and began eating his foot. Once he was done eating, he pressed play on the remote as the episode continued with the narrator saying in a happy tone, "Peppa and her family were watching the news, but what they heard was very pleasant indeed." On the TV, a guy who looked like he was in his late 40s was doing a news report. "In other boring news, newly elected Prime Minister Mr. Potato is coming down here today to discuss better work relations to the Tower of Chili Charlie and Babby Bob." Peppa and George began jumping up and down on the sofa after hearing this, and demanded that Daddy and Mommy take them to see Mr. Potato.
"Okay, Peppa, but first you need to scrub the floors,"
the King of Hyrule said as he came in, farting violently as he did so.
"Okay,"
Rainbow Dash said as Peppa began violently scrubbing the floor. Once she was done, Peppa and George got into the car with Mommy and Daddy Pig. They made their drive towards the local shopping center where Mr. Potato would be visiting. How they knew what shop he was visiting and what time he would be there was anybody's guess. Suddenly, Slosno's face come on screen and he said,
"I need $1 million in cash. I need a man with powerful friends. I need Don Salan, these politicians you carry in your pocket like so many nickels and dimes."
The episode then cut to show the Pig family along with the other families walking outside the shopping center when a small limousine pulled up in the parking lot. Mr. Potato got out and greeted Daddy Pig with, "Oh, hello, sexy." Daddy Pig blushed. It was shown via flashback that Daddy Pig had become Potato's lover to escape prison when Brexit came to pass. Mr. Potato began speaking with, "My dear children, today is the day when Brexit will finally come to pass. Trust me on this." Potato's bodyguard said while holding his thumb up. It had diarrhea all over it. Mr. Potato then explained that his plans for Brexit were to put the whole city under vegetable law, and anyone who opposes the emergency protocols will get a beat down by Mr. Krabs.
"Ah, Peppa, George, so glad to see you again."
Mr. Potato greeted Peppa and George in his French accent.
"Have you been eating your vegetables?"
he asked.
Yes. We've been eating carrots, onions, potatoes,"
Peppa said as Mr. Potato cut her off with, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea." Suddenly, Potato's bodyguard's eyes turned into potatoes, and he said, "I'm totally radical for a baked potato." He then pulled a machete and proceeded to brutally chop Mr. Potato into pieces. He made Mr. Potato into French fries and had himself a lovely fish supper with the fat controller and his lover Sam the conductor while Thomas died from indigestion. I told you this was a weird story. Peppa and George watched on in horror as Daddy Pig assisted the bodyguard in the murder as well as Sloslo, who fell from the sky. They crushed the French fries and made it into mashed potatoes. Daddy Pig then turned to the screen and said, "I'm Prime Minister now, bitches." He then got into the limousine with the bodyguard as they made their way back down to Drowning Street. The narrator then said,
3 months had passed, and Great Britain was now under Daddy Pig's leadership and had seen Brexit fall into the abyss.
It then showed that with Daddy Pig as the new Prime Minister, Britain had fallen into a dictatorship. He had people who protested his leadership skills gunned down in the streets, starved his people, and used government money to build himself his very own castle on a hill. Because when the sun hits that hill, it just is so right. Get it? The episode then showed the tombstone of Mr. Potato. A small thunder strike is shown as a large hand comes out from under the tombstone, as an evil laugh is heard in the background. The episode then ended with the normal credits. There was also a post-credit scene from Pig from back at the barnyard talking to the screen.
"Hey folks, viewer mail time again. This one's from the Shadow Reader, age 24. Dear Pig, aren't you a pig?"
Pig then answered with the question with,
"Well, the answer is no."
The clip then ended and the DVD popped out in the DVD player by itself. After we were done watching the episode, my father passed out onto the floor, and Asquith got up from his chair and made a phone call to his superiors in the U.S., asking to place Great Britain under martial law. Several hours later, in the early hours of the following morning, a large group of soldiers were outside my house. I told Asquith my story, and he had his soldiers looking all over the city for Victor Kennedy. Luca Barsi had left him due to him being sent on a mission to infiltrate a rival gang on the orders of his boss. My father was placed into sedation to cure his newly found insanity he earned from watching the episode. So within just a day, the Pigging Boys had officially disbanded. I was just as confused as my father, as I spent the next few days trying to find information and footage of the episode online, but unfortunately, there was no such luck in that regard. I eventually got a text from Mr. Shadow asking me to meet him at the local Starbucks. I went to Starbucks and bought myself a hot chocolate while I awaited the arrival of Mr. Shadow. Mr. Shadow soon came in 5 minutes later and sat down in the chair across from mine with the otter plush still placed proudly upon his shoulder. "You have so much to see, my friend. So much," Mr. Shadow said as I asked, "What do you mean?" "That Victor Kennedy bloke you bought that DVD from was an employee of Rabel Manuals," Mr. Shadow exclaimed. "Bullshit! Ray Manuals is dead. The Shadow Reader and his friends defeated him by ending him into the end of time," I said as Mr. Shadow sighed before saying, "We didn't defeat him. We managed to escape the cracks somehow. We don't know how or why," Mr. Shadow explained. "Who exactly are you?" I asked as Mr. Shadow sighed before removing his gimp mask. Yes, he wore a gimp mask. He removed it, revealing the face of none other than the Shadow Reader himself. "Now I think we understand each other," Shadow said as he made our way out of the Starbucks into the busy streets. We made our way back to my house. Asquith's soldiers didn't bother to stop us due to them being on Shadow's payroll for big money. We made our way up to my living room window where we saw General Asquith having a heated discussion with a man with a bald head. "I got the White House phoning me, directing me because Downing Street won't answer their calls. This is outrageous. We haven't even started the vaccination program," Asquith yelled angrily at the bald guy said. It has been all a bit of shock. This is the greatest crisis of modern history, and you're doing nothing. Your behavior has been shameful, sir. You're supposed to change, but we need positive leadership," Asquith went on. Then all of a sudden, the bald guy began farting violently, which disgusted Asquith, but made me hard like a mother ducking race car. "What's going on here?" Asquith asked before continuing. "And where's the rest of the cabinet, and why have they been airlifted in?" The man continued farting before saying, "They have gotten away, so I canceled the airlifts." "Oh, I'm shaking my booty," the man said as he let out the most smelly fart that had ever been smelt. It smelled like rotten meat and rat pee mixed together in a bag underneath the house of the North Pole, not South Pole. We're not that sick. The constant farting as well, the man's lame excuses prompted to Asquith to yell, "Sir, under Section 5 of the emergency protocols, it is my duty to relieve you from command." This caused Rabe to stop farting and giggling and look at Asquith with a sinister glare. "And by God, I'll put Downing Street under martial law if I have to." Who's that bold guy Asquith's yelling at?" I asked, which caused Mr. Shadow to let out a heavy sigh. "That's Ray Manuals," Shadow said before continuing. "And he's the new Prime Minister of Great Britain." "What?" I yelled at the top of my lungs. I looked back inside the window and saw Ray pulling out a large sword from his pants. He whacked Asquith over the head with it and screamed in pain as he was killed. Suddenly, another big fat guy, this one from among Doll Failed and the Spyro 3 copy from hell, by the way, came into the room and asked, "Is he dead?" "Yup, so go get changed," Rabe said as he brought Asquith's now lifeless body over to the fat guy. I recognized the fat man as being Greg Bikeman, head teacher of Hartleydale High School. 20 minutes later, Greg removed his skin suit, revealing him to be a large green alien. He then replaced the suit of Greg that he had of General Asquith in order to be able to take over the British military in his new body. The alien remarked, "So what do you think? How's the compression?" "I don't know, I think I've got too much balance around the middle." He then let out a massive fart and said, "Oh, it's better." Better get rid of the skin," Rabe said as he handed Asquith the discarded skin of Blackman. "Shame. I quite enjoyed being Greg. He had a wife, mistress, and a young farmer." The false Asquith chuckled as he threw the discarded skin suit into the pantry we used to store our shoes. "God, I was busy," the false Asquith said as he and Rabe made their way out of the back door. "Back to work, I have an army to command," the false Asquith said as he and Rabe disappeared from our sight. What just happened?" I asked Shadow, confused. "That thing you saw was a member of the Sleethith family, a family of criminals from the planet Roxcornflapatorius. They use the skin of people they've killed to disguise themselves. And now in Asquith's body, that Seathan had controlled in the entire army, with Rabe as prime minister and that Sleethan general in the army. We are in deep shit without a paddle," Shadow explained. We then got into a car which had parked a few blocks down the road from my house, and we made our way toward Shadow's house to discuss a plan of action.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.